The crystal champagne flute trembled in my weathered hand as I watched my son Marcus exchange vows with Stephanie. 200 guests filled the historic mansion's ballroom, yet I felt completely alone. That changed the moment Stephanie approached me during the reception, her white dress rustling like a serpent's warning. Her perfectly painted lips curved into a smile that never reached her cold blue eyes. "Get out of here and don't come back, you're not welcome here," she hissed, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. I touched the recording device in my jacket pocket, ensuring it captured every word. My smile remained steady as I responded, "Okay, but I'll take some others with me." I turned toward the head table, catching the eyes of those who mattered. When Stephanie realized who was rising from their seats to follow me, her victorious smirk shattered into pure terror. 6 months before that dramatic wedding day, I remember the Sunday afternoon when Marcus first brought Stephanie to our family home. The house still carried the warmth of my late wife Margaret's presence, even 5 years after cancer took her from us. At 65, I'd grown accustomed to the quiet filling my days managing the automotive parts business Margaret and I built together over 35 years. Marcus arrived promptly at 4 o'clock, as he had every Sunday since his mother passed. But this time a stunning blonde woman accompanied him, her designer heels clicking against our hardwood floors with calculated precision. "Dad, I want you to meet Stephanie Walker." Marcus announced, his face glowing with an enthusiasm I hadn't seen since before his mother's illness. "Stephanie, this is my father Cordell." She extended a manicured hand, her grip surprisingly firm. "Mr. Cordell, Marcus has told me so much about you. What a beautiful home you have here." I watched her eyes sweep across the living room, lingering on Margaret's collection of vintage pottery, the original oil paintings we'd collected during our travels, and the mahogany furniture we'd inherited from my parents. Her assessment wasn't admiring. It was calculating. "Please, just Cordell is fine," I replied, leading them to the dining room where I'd prepared our traditional Sunday roast. Margaret always insisted on first names at family dinners. "Your wife had excellent taste," Stephanie commented, running her fingers along the antique china cabinet. "These pieces must be worth a fortune. Are they insured properly?" Marcus shot her an embarrassed look. "Stephanie works in estate planning," he explained quickly. "She can't help but notice these things." Throughout dinner, Stephanie steered every conversation toward finances. She asked about the house's history, the neighborhood's property values, and whether I'd considered downsizing. When I mentioned the business, her eyes lit up with an intensity that made my old Navy instincts flare up. "Marcus mentioned you own several commercial properties, too." She probed, cutting into her roast with surgical precision. "It must be overwhelming managing everything alone." My brother Frank, who joined us as he often did, caught my eye from across the table. At 62, Frank had built his own construction empire and possessed a keen radar for opportunists. The slight narrowing of his eyes told me he sensed the same danger I did. "I manage just fine," I responded evenly. "Keeps me busy and sharp." The conversation continued pleasantly enough until dessert, when Stephanie made her first real mistake. While helping clear plates, she accidentally mentioned seeing legal documents on Marcus's desk. "Oh, I shouldn't have said anything," she gasped theatrically, pressing her hand to her chest. "It's just that Marcus was reviewing some papers about your will, and I happened to notice them when I was looking for a pen. I told him he shouldn't leave such private documents lying around." The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Marcus's face flushed crimson while Frank's fork paused midway to his mouth. "Those were confidential documents from my attorney," Marcus stammered. "I was just reviewing the executor responsibilities Dad asked me to take on." Stephanie touched his arm gently. "Of course, honey. It's wonderful that your father trusts you with everything. After all, you're his only child. It makes sense that you'd inherit everything when the time comes." The presumption in her voice set my teeth on edge. Margaret and I had raised Marcus to value hard work and integrity, not to count unhatched chickens. This woman spoke about my death and assets as if they were entries on a shopping list. My estate planning is a private matter, I said firmly, but politely. I've made provisions that I believe are fair and appropriate. Oh, absolutely. Stephanie backpedaled, but her smile never wavered. I just think it's beautiful how close you and Marcus are. So many families fight over inheritance. It tears them apart. After they left that evening, Frank lingered over coffee. That woman's trouble, Cordell, he stated bluntly. Did you see how she cataloged everything in this house like an auctioneer preparing for an estate sale? I nodded, my mind already working through possibilities. Marcus seems smitten, though. If I criticize her directly, it'll only push him closer to her. Then you'd better play this smart, Frank advised. Margaret always said you were too trusting. Don't let that girl prove her right. That night, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to my lawyer, Judge William Thornton, who'd been my friend since our law school days before I chose business over jurisprudence. William, I need to update my will with some very specific conditions, I explained. Ironclad provisions that can't be contested or circumvented. Having second thoughts about something, Cordell, William's voice carried decades of legal wisdom. Just taking precautions? I replied. Can you meet me tomorrow? The second call was to my security company. By week's end, I'd have discrete cameras installed throughout the main areas of my home. Some might call it paranoid, but I called it prudent. My years in the Navy taught me to trust my instincts, and every instinct screamed that Stephanie Walker was a predator circling my family. As I sat in my study that night looking at Margaret's photo on my desk, I made a silent promise. I'll protect our boy, sweetheart, even if he can't see the danger himself. Little did I know that this Sunday dinner was just the opening move in a chess game that would nearly destroy my family before ultimately saving it. 3 months after that first troubling dinner, Thanksgiving arrived with its usual Michigan chill and the promise of family gathering. Marcus had called earlier in the week, his voice bubbling with excitement about bringing Stephanie to the family celebration. I'd prepared the traditional feast in Margaret's honor. The dining room table extended to accommodate Frank, my sister Barbara, and several cousins who'd made the journey home. The doorbell rang at precisely 2 o'clock. Marcus stood on the porch, snowflakes dusting his dark hair with Stephanie clutched possessively at his side. The first thing I noticed was the ring, a massive diamond that caught the afternoon light like a spotlight. "Dad, we have news," Marcus announced before they'd even removed their coats. Stephanie thrust her left hand forward, the gem practically blinding under the foyer lights. "We're engaged," she squealed, though her enthusiasm seemed more directed at the ring than the commitment it represented. Barbara, who'd emerged from the kitchen wearing Margaret's old apron, stopped dead in her tracks. At 63, my sister had spent 40 years teaching high school and possessed an uncanny ability to spot deception. The tightening around her mouth told me she saw what I saw, a performance rather than genuine joy. "Congratulations." I managed embracing my son while carefully avoiding more than a perfunctory handshake with his fiancée. "When did this happen?" "Last weekend," Marcus beamed. "I proposed at that new French restaurant downtown. Table for a tour. The one where dinner costs $400, Frank interjected, arriving from the living room with his typical contractor's directness. Stephanie's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. Marcus wanted everything to be perfect. He knows I deserve the best. We gathered in the living room, where the fire crackled warmly, everyone offering congratulations with varying degrees of sincerity. Barbara poured wine while I studied the couple. Marcus sat forward eagerly, but Stephanie had positioned herself strategically on the love seat, the hand bearing the ring constantly in motion as she gestured. "We're thinking a June wedding," she announced. "Marcus's friend owns that gorgeous venue on Lakeshore Drive. You know, the one where the governor's daughter got married." "That's quite ambitious," Barbara observed. "Only 7 months to plan." "Oh, I've been planning my wedding since I was a little girl," Stephanie replied. "I know exactly what I want." The conversation flowed through wedding plans, guest lists, and honeymoon destinations, each detail more extravagant than the last. But the real purpose of Stephanie's visit revealed itself over dinner. As we passed dishes of turkey and stuffing, Stephanie reached into her designer purse and produced a stack of glossy brochures. "Cordell, I've been thinking about your situation." She began spreading the pamphlets across the table like tarot cards revealing my future. "A man your age rattling around in this big house all alone? It can't be easy maintaining everything." The brochures advertised luxury senior communities with names like Golden Sunset Manor and Peaceful Pines Retirement Village. Each featured smiling, silver-haired couples playing golf and enjoying poolside cocktails. "My situation," I repeated, keeping my tone neutral despite the anger building in my chest. "Well, yes," Stephanie continued, apparently oblivious to the tension crackling around the table. "These places offer wonderful amenities, medical staff on site, organized activities, meal plans. You could enjoy your golden years without the burden of home maintenance." Barbara's fork clattered against her plate. Frank's knuckles whitened around his water glass. Even some of the cousins shifted uncomfortably. "And look," Stephanie flipped to a page she'd marked with a pink sticky note. "This one has a special payment plan where you can use your home equity. You could sell this place and have plenty of money for the entrance fee, plus a nice nest egg." The calculated nature of her presentation made my blood run cold. She'd researched specific facilities, calculated costs, even estimated my home's value. This wasn't casual concern. It was a business plan. "That's very thoughtful of you to research," I said, carefully gathering the brochures into a neat stack. "I'll certainly give these some consideration." Marcus finally seemed to sense the discomfort. "Dad's not going anywhere, Steph. This is his home." "Of course not right away." She patted his hand condescendingly. "But it's good to plan ahead. My grandmother waited too long and ended up in a state facility. We wouldn't want that for your father." "No," Barbara interjected sharply. "We wouldn't want Cordell to lose the home he built with his wife and raised his family in. How silly of us not to ship him off to some institution." The sarcasm in my sister's voice could have etched glass. Stephanie's smile faltered for just a moment before returning full force. "I'm only thinking of what's best for everyone," she defended. "These places aren't institutions, they're communities. And think how much easier it would be for Marcus once we're married. He wouldn't have to worry about you being alone or falling down the stairs." "I'm perfectly capable of navigating my own stairs," I responded. "Been doing it for 30 years without incident." The rest of dinner proceeded with strained politeness. Stephanie dominated the conversation with wedding plans, occasionally circling back to the benefits of downsizing and simplifying. Each time she mentioned the house's value or the burden of maintenance, I saw Frank's jaw clench tighter. After dinner, as we gathered in the living room for coffee and pie, Stephanie excused herself to use the powder room. But instead of heading to the guest bathroom, I watched her turn down the hallway toward my study. My marine-trained instincts kicked in, and I quietly followed. Through the crack in the door, I saw her photographing documents on my desk with her phone. Her fingers flew across the screen as she typed messages. I pulled out my own phone and silently recorded her invasion of my privacy. She whispered into her phone, "The old fool has more than we thought. 3 commercial properties downtown and a stock portfolio worth millions. We just need him out of the picture." My hands trembled with rage, but I forced myself to remain calm. Confronting her now would only create a scene and drive Marcus to her defense. Instead, I loudly cleared my throat and called out, "Stephanie, the guest bathroom is the other direction." She jumped quickly, shoving her phone into her pocket and closing the desk drawers she'd been rifling through. "Oh, I got turned around. These old houses have such confusing layouts." "Yes," I agreed, studying her flushed face. "Easy to get lost when you're somewhere you don't belong." The double meaning wasn't lost on her, but she maintained her innocent act, as we returned to the living room. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced conversation and early departures. Barbara hugged me fiercely at the door, whispering, "That woman is Poison Cordell. Watch yourself." After everyone left, I stood in my study surveying what Stephanie had disturbed. She'd been thorough. Financial statements, property deeds, investment summaries, all the ammunition someone would need to calculate my net worth and plan their attack. The next morning, Black Friday, while others battled shopping crowds, I had a different mission. My old Navy buddy, Samuel Briggs, ran a private investigation firm in Detroit. Sam had helped me with corporate security issues over the years, but this was personal. I need a complete background check on Stephanie Walker. I told him over secure phone. Everything. Previous addresses, employment history, relationships, financial records. Leave no stone unturned. "This about that girl your boy's dating?" Sam asked. He'd met Marcus several times at company functions. "Engaged now," I corrected bitterly, "and I think she's running some kind of long game." "I'll put my best people on it. Give me 2 weeks." I also made another call to my home security company upgrading to their premium package with hidden cameras in every room except the bathrooms and bedrooms. If Stephanie wanted to snoop, she'd do it on camera. That evening, as I reviewed the retirement home brochures she'd so helpfully provided, a detail caught my eye. Each facility she'd chosen required significant upfront payments, the kind that would necessitate liquidating major assets. And buried in the fine print of one, I found something interesting, a referral program that paid commissions to anyone who successfully placed a resident. The pieces of Stephanie's puzzle were coming together, forming a picture I didn't like. But I needed proof, solid evidence that would open Marcus's eyes without destroying our relationship. As I filed the brochures in a folder marked Evidence, I thought about Margaret. She would have seen through Stephanie in an instant. My wife had a gift for reading people, while I'd always been too trusting, too willing to see the best in others. "Not this time, my love," I whispered to her photo. "This time I'll be as cunning as our enemies." The game was afoot, and I intended to win. Stephanie thought she was dealing with a lonely old man ready for pasture. She was about to learn that this old bull still had his horns. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, Samuel Briggs called with urgency in his voice that made my blood run cold. "Cordell, we need to meet in person. What I've found, you're not going to like it." We arranged to meet at a quiet diner on the outskirts of Detroit, far from prying eyes. Sam arrived looking grim, a thick manila folder tucked under his arm. At 68, the former naval intelligence officer still carried himself with military precision, but worry lines creased his weathered face. "Coffee first," he said, signaling the waitress. "You're going to need it." Once we were alone in the corner booth, Sam opened the folder. The first document made my stomach lurch. A death certificate for someone named Harold Morrison. "Stephanie Walker isn't even her real name," Sam began. "She's actually Stephanie Walsh. This is her pattern, Cordell. She targets wealthy widowers with adult children." He spread out more documents. Marriage certificates, property transfers, obituaries. The evidence painted a horrifying picture. Harold Morrison was her first husband's father. Wealthy real estate developer in Ohio. 6 months after Stephanie married his son, Harold suffered a sudden cognitive decline. The family doctor who'd been treating him for years was mysteriously replaced. The new physician diagnosed dementia and recommended immediate institutionalization. "Let me guess." I interjected, my coffee growing cold. "A facility that required a large upfront payment." Exactly. Harold signed power of attorney over to his son, who then transferred it to his new wife for convenience, while he traveled for work. Within 3 months, Harold's properties were sold, his accounts drained. He died in that facility 8 months later, supposedly from complications of Alzheimer's. "But you don't believe that—" Sam pulled out another set of papers. The original family doctor told my investigator that Harold was sharp as a tack at his last real examination. No signs of cognitive decline. But here's where it gets worse. The next photo showed Stephanie with a different man, both dressed formally, at what appeared to be a wedding. Husband number 2, Richard Paulson. His mother Dorothy owned a chain of boutique hotels in Indiana. Same playbook: sudden onset dementia, institutionalization, asset transfer. Dorothy's own sister tried to contest it in court, but the paperwork was airtight. What happened to Dorothy? Died within a year of entering the facility. Official cause was stroke, but the sister swears Dorothy was healthy as a horse before Stephanie entered their lives. My hands shook as I absorbed the implications. This wasn't just about money. This was about systematic elder abuse, possibly worse. There's more. Sam continued pulling out surveillance photos. This man here, that's Derek Crenshaw. He's been photographed with Stephanie multiple times over the past 5 years. Hotel meetings, intimate dinners, even a vacation in Cabo. My guy managed to get close enough to record some conversations. He handed me a small digital player with earbuds. What I heard made my blood boil. Stephanie's voice discussing their marks and timeline for my removal. Derek responding with cold calculations about property values and liquidation strategies. They're a team, Sam explained. She finds the targets, marries into the family, then they systematically strip the assets. Derek handles the financial manipulation while she manages the emotional con. But there's something else, isn't there? I could see it in Sam's expression. He pulled out a final set of photos, surveillance shots from a coffee shop. They showed Stephanie dropping something into a cup before carrying it to Marcus. We tested the residue from similar cups in the trash. Benzodiazepine derivatives, prescription sedatives. Low doses not enough to cause serious harm, but sufficient to create compliance and mild confusion. She's been drugging your son, Cordell. The room spun. My hands clenched into fists as rage unlike anything I'd felt since combat flooded through me. This woman wasn't just after my money. She was poisoning my child. Can we go to the police with this? Sam shook his head. Everything she's done is just barely legal. The marriages were real. The power of attorney documents legitimate, the property transfers properly executed. Even the drugging would be hard to prove. The doses are therapeutic levels. She could claim Marcus has anxiety, and she's helping him with his prescribed medication. So what do I do? You need incontrovertible evidence of criminal intent. Recordings of her admitting to the scheme, proof of forgery, evidence of identity theft. And you need to protect yourself and Marcus in the meantime. I spent the next hour absorbing every detail, memorizing faces, names, dates. Sam had included contact information for the previous victims' families, though most were too traumatized or legally bound to speak publicly. There's one more thing, Sam added as we prepared to leave. Derek Crenshaw has a record: fraud, embezzlement, identity theft. He served 3 years in federal prison. If we can prove their conspiracy, that could be the leverage we need. Driving home, I formulated my plan. Direct confrontation was impossible. Marcus was too far under Stephanie's influence, literally and figuratively. I needed to be smarter, more strategic. Over the next 2 weeks, I executed several moves. First, I met with William Thornton to create an irrevocable trust that would protect my assets regardless of what happened to me. The terms were specific. Marcus would inherit everything, but only at age 40, or upon my natural death, with explicit provisions that excluded spouses from any control. Second, I began documenting everything. Every interaction with Stephanie was recorded. The hidden cameras in my home captured her continued snooping, including one incident where she attempted to access my safe. Most importantly, I started intercepting Marcus's morning coffee routine. I'd call him early, suggesting we meet at different cafes for breakfast, claiming I missed our father-son time. Over 3 weeks, I watched the fog lift from his eyes. He became more alert, more questioning. One morning, he even commented, Dad, Stephanie's been pushing really hard about setting a wedding date. Says we need to lock down the venue, but something feels rushed. Wedding planning can be stressful, I replied carefully. Maybe you both need to slow down, make sure you're making decisions with clear heads. But Stephanie noticed the change. Her calls to Marcus increased, her possessiveness intensified. She started showing up at his office, bringing him homemade lunches, no doubt dosed with her special ingredients. The breakthrough came when I received a call from an unexpected source. A woman identifying herself as Jennifer Walsh, Stephanie's younger sister. "Mr. Cordell, I heard through family contacts that Stephanie is engaged to your son. I need to warn you. She destroyed my life and she'll destroy yours if you let her." We met at a park where Jennifer, a haunted-looking woman in her 30s, shared her story. Stephanie had seduced and stolen Jennifer's first husband, drained their parents' retirement savings through manipulation, and left the family in ruins. "She's a sociopath," Jennifer said bluntly. "Has been since childhood. But she's smart. She knows exactly how to work the system. I have recordings of her bragging about her cons documents she thought I'd never find. I've been waiting for someone with resources to finally stop her." "Why didn't you go to the authorities?" "I tried. She had me committed for mental instability when I first spoke out. Spent 3 months in a psychiatric facility while she finished destroying my life. By the time I got out, she'd vanished with everything." Jennifer provided me with a safety deposit box key and location. "Everything I've collected is there. Use it to protect your son." As November turned to December, I felt the noose tightening. Stephanie had accelerated her timeline, pushing for a June wedding, while increasing her pressure for me to consider retirement homes. She'd even scheduled tours without my knowledge, sending me confirmations for appointments I never made. But I was ready. My alliance was building. Sam continued surveillance. Jennifer provided inside knowledge. William prepared legal countermeasures. And slowly, carefully, I began reaching out to trusted family members. The chess pieces were moving into position. Stephanie thought she was playing against a naive old man. She was about to discover she'd challenged a grandmaster. The wedding planning continued, but now it served a different purpose. Every vendor she chose, every arrangement she made became part of my counter-strategy. Because sometimes the best trap is the one your enemy builds for herself. 2 days before Christmas, while Marcus and Stephanie attended a wedding expo in Chicago, I summoned my most trusted family members to a war council. The text message was simple. "Family emergency. My house 2 p.m. Come alone? Tell no one." They arrived punctually, faces etched with concern. Frank came first, followed by Barbara, then my late wife, Margaret's sister, Ruth, a retired circuit court judge whose legal mind remained sharp at 64. My cousins George and Henry Stevenson, successful businessmen who'd built their fortunes in catering and floral wholesale, completed the inner circle. "Whatever this is about," Ruth said, settling into Margaret's favorite armchair. "I haven't seen you this serious since Margaret's diagnosis." I'd prepared the conference room meticulously. Evidence covered the dining table. Photographs, documents, recordings. A laptop displayed surveillance footage on loop. Coffee perked in the kitchen, but this wasn't a social gathering. "What you're about to learn will shock and anger you," I began. "But I need your complete attention and absolute discretion. Marcus's life depends on it." For the next hour, I presented Sam's investigation findings. The room's atmosphere grew heavier with each revelation. Barbara gasped when she saw the drugging evidence. Frank's face darkened dangerously as I played the audio of Stephanie and Derek planning my demise. Ruth took notes with professional detachment, but her pen strokes grew increasingly aggressive. When I finished, silence blanketed the room like a funeral shroud. George spoke first. "That woman ate at my table, smiled at my children, and all the while—" "She's a monster," Barbara interrupted, tears streaming. "Poor Marcus. How could he know? How could any of us suspect such evil?" "The question now," Ruth interjected with judicial calm, "is what we do about it. The evidence is compelling but largely circumstantial. We need proof of criminal intent that will stand up in court. Which brings me to our unexpected ally," I said, gesturing toward the door as the bell rang. Jennifer Walsh entered nervously, clearly overwhelmed by the assembled group. I'd coached her beforehand, but facing a room of justifiably angry people tested anyone's courage. "This is Stephanie's sister," I announced. "She's risking everything to help us." Jennifer's story poured out. A lifetime of destruction left in Stephanie's wake. She produced recordings from her safety deposit box that made everyone recoil. Stephanie's voice cold and calculating, discussing how she'd manipulated their parents into signing over their retirement funds. Laughing about Harold Morrison's confusion as she increased his medication. Planning Derek's role in each con with business-like efficiency. "She destroyed our family," Jennifer concluded, voice breaking. "Our parents died in poverty because of her. My ex-husband killed himself after she ruined him. I've spent 5 years gathering evidence, waiting for someone strong enough to stop her." Ruth reviewed the recordings with professional interest. "This is good, but we need more. We need her on record discussing current crimes, not past ones. We need conspiracy in real time." "Which is where you all come in," I explained. "We're going to use the wedding against her." The plan I outlined was ambitious but achievable. We'd transform Stephanie's own trap into ours. Frank would leverage his construction connections to ensure his crews handled all venue preparations. His workers would install sophisticated recording equipment throughout the reception hall under the guise of electrical upgrades. George and Henry, whose businesses Marcus had already approached for catering and flowers, would ensure strategic placement of microphones in centerpieces and serving stations. Their staff would be briefed to watch for and document any suspicious behavior. Ruth would activate her legal network to have appropriate authorities on standby. She'd also research every guest on Stephanie's list, looking for plants and confederates. Barbara would mobilize her teacher network. 40 years of education created an intelligence network rivaling any agency. Former students worked everywhere from banks to government offices. They'd help verify identities and spot fake documentation. "And Jennifer?" Barbara asked gently. "I'll be hiding in plain sight," Jennifer responded with grim determination. "Hired as an assistant photographer. Stephanie hasn't seen me in 5 years and I've changed my appearance significantly. She won't recognize me until it's too late." "This is elaborate," Henry observed. "What makes you think she won't sense a trap?" I smiled coldly. "Because she's arrogant. She's succeeded too many times. In her mind, I'm already institutionalized, my assets transferred. She's planning victory while we're preparing for war." "What about Marcus?" Barbara asked the question, haunting everyone. "I'm working on that," I assured them. "The reduced drugging has helped, but she's noticed. We have one shot at this. If we fail, she'll accelerate her timeline or worse, convince Marcus to cut ties completely." Ruth stood, judge mode, fully engaged. "Then we need legal preparations. Frank, I'll need your crews to sign confidentiality agreements. George Henry will need contracts that appear routine, but allow for recording. Jennifer, we need to document your evidence properly for chain of custody." The meeting stretched into evening as we refined details. Each person had specific roles and backup plans. We established secure communication channels and code words. This wasn't just about protecting my assets anymore. It was about justice for all of Stephanie's victims. As they prepared to leave, Frank pulled me aside. "Cordell, what if Marcus doesn't believe us? What if he chooses her even with all the evidence?" I'd wrestled with that possibility every night. "Then I'll have lost my son. But at least he'll be alive and eventually free. If we do nothing, Stephanie will destroy him after she's done with me." Barbara hugged me fiercely. "Margaret would be proud. You're fighting for your boy the smart way." Ruth was last to leave, her legal mind still processing. "Cordell, we'll need one more thing. A way to make the marriage invalid if it proceeds. If Stephanie used a false identity to obtain the license that's fraud. I'll research precedents." As my house emptied, I stood among the evidence of Stephanie's crimes. Jennifer had stayed behind, too emotionally drained to drive. "You know she'll try to destroy you when this is over," she warned. "She keeps files on everyone who's wronged her plans for revenge that would make your blood run cold. Let her try. I responded. I faced enemies in combat who threatened my life. This woman threatens my family. There's no force more dangerous than a father protecting his child. Jennifer smiled sadly. I wish our father had been like you. Maybe things would have been different. Over the following weeks, our alliance worked with military precision. Frank's crews completed their installations while making small talk about the beautiful bride. George perfected centerpieces with hidden recording devices that looked like decorative crystals. Henry's team prepared bouquets with tiny cameras that would capture every angle. Barbara's network produced gold. 3 of Stephanie's guest list were actors from a talent agency specializing in event atmosphere enhancement. Another 5 had criminal records for fraud-related offenses. Her supposed wealthy uncle from California was actually Derek's former cellmate. Ruth discovered the legal smoking gun we needed. Stephanie Walsh had officially changed her name to Stephanie Walker through fraudulent documents. The real Stephanie Walker had died in infancy 35 years ago. Identity theft of a deceased person was a federal crime. As January arrived with wedding preparations in full swing, I received a call from Marcus that nearly broke my resolve. Dad, I'm worried about Stephanie. She's been so stressed about the wedding. Says she feels like people are watching her, judging her. Maybe we should postpone. For a moment, I wanted to tell him everything, to save him from the heartbreak bearing down like a freight train. But I knew Stephanie would spin it as jealousy use it to drive a permanent wedge between us. Wedding planning is stressful, I managed. But you both wanted June. Unless, are you having second thoughts? No, he said too quickly. I love her. Sometimes I feel like I don't really know her, like she's performing instead of just being. Trust your instincts, son. They're usually right. The call ended with Marcus more confused than ever. But confusion was better than blind certainty. Doubt was the crack in Stephanie's facade that might save him. February brought final preparations. The alliance met weekly refining plans and sharing intelligence. Jennifer had successfully embedded herself with the photography team, even attending planning sessions where Stephanie treated her like furniture. She's getting sloppy, Jennifer reported. Yesterday, she took a call from Derek right in front of me. They were discussing offshore accounts and phase 2 after the wedding. Everything was falling into place. The venue was wired better than a federal courthouse. Our people were positioned throughout the vendor teams. Law enforcement was briefed and ready. The trap was set. All that remained was the wedding day itself. Stephanie thought she was walking down the aisle toward her greatest score. Instead, she was walking into an ambush 5 months in the making. The old bull was ready to charge. And this time the matador would discover her cape was made of tissue paper. Dawn broke on the wedding day with crystalline clarity, as if nature itself wanted an unobstructed view of the coming drama. I stood at my bedroom window, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of justice. Today, Stephanie Walsh would learn what happened when you threatened a father's child. By 6 o'clock, Frank's crews were already at the venue, ostensibly handling last-minute setup, but actually conducting final equipment checks. His foreman Tony sent a coded text, "All systems operational. The stage is set." The Riverside Manor, a sprawling estate overlooking Lake Michigan, had hosted governors' daughters and senators' sons. Today it would host something far more dramatic than a society wedding. Every room, every corridor, every garden path was monitored and recorded. I arrived early, finding the coordinator's office transformed into our command center. Ruth sat before multiple monitors displaying feeds from throughout the venue. A young man I didn't recognize operated the equipment with professional efficiency. My former clerk's son, Ruth explained. FBI technical specialist. He volunteered to help off the books when he heard about the elder abuse angle. Any sign of our targets? Derek checked into the Grand Hotel last night under the name David Carpenter. Jennifer confirmed his identity. He's wearing a rather obvious fake beard and colored contacts. On cue, one monitor showed Derek in the hotel lobby, his disguise almost comical in its inadequacy. Prison had not improved his subtlety. George arrived with his catering team, each member carefully selected for discretion and observation skills. Several were off-duty police officers moonlighting for extra income. They understood this was no ordinary wedding. The champagne fountain is particularly well monitored, George reported with grim satisfaction. If anyone tries to add anything unexpected to the drinks, we'll know immediately. Henry's florists worked with artistic precision, each arrangement a masterpiece of beauty, hiding electronic eyes and ears. The bridal bouquet alone contained 3 separate recording devices, ensuring we'd capture every word Stephanie spoke. By 10 o'clock, guests began arriving for the noon ceremony. Barbara stationed herself at the entrance with the official guest list, her teacher's memory cataloging faces with photographic accuracy. 2 of the actors just arrived, she murmured into her earpiece. The supposed Vanderbilt cousins. Their rental car has Nevada plates, not New York. The most crucial positioning was Jennifer. Now brunette, with subtle prosthetics altering her facial structure, she moved confidently among the photography team. Stephanie had passed within 3 feet of her sister, without a flicker of recognition. "She's in the bridal suite," Jennifer reported. "Already had 2 glasses of champagne and a Xanax. She's nervous, but hiding it well." I positioned myself in the groom's preparation room, where Marcus paced like a caged animal. His groomsmen college friends, unaware of the underlying drama, tried joking to ease his tension. "You okay, son?" I asked during a private moment. "I don't know, Dad. I feel like something's about to go terribly wrong. Stephanie's been acting strange all week. Secret phone calls, locked suitcases, meetings she won't explain. Pre-wedding jitters are normal," I said, hating the necessary deception. "But remember, it's never too late to change your mind. Your mother and I called off our first engagement. Sometimes wisdom means admitting a mistake." Marcus stared at me, processing implications. "You never told me that. We dated in college, got engaged too young, realized we wanted different things. 2 years later, we met again at a conference. By then, we knew who we were and what we wanted. Real love, not infatuation. But Stephanie and I, just remember, whatever happens today, I love you and support you. Your happiness matters more than any party or embarrassment." Before he could respond, the wedding planner knocked. 15 minutes to processional. The next phase required delicate timing. I took my position in the vestibule where I could observe both the ceremony space and the entrance. Ruth's voice crackled through my earpiece. "We have a problem. 3 more of Derek's associates just arrived. They're not on any list." I watched the men enter, hard-faced individuals who moved like predators scanning for threats. One positioned himself near the exit, another by the gift table, the third roaming like security. "Muscle." Frank's voice confirmed. "In case things go sideways. Want me to intercept?" "No," I decided. "Let them think they're in control, but keep your people ready." The music began Bach's traditional processional, filling the space with deceptive serenity. The groomsmen entered first, then Marcus, looking handsome, but haunted in his tuxedo. I'd never seen my son appear so conflicted. The bridesmaids followed in synchronized steps, each dress a symphony of lavender that Stephanie had insisted cost a fortune. Then came the pause, that theatrical moment before the bride's entrance. The music shifted to Wagner's bridal chorus, and the doors opened to reveal Stephanie. She'd chosen a dress that screamed money rather than taste, crystal-encrusted bodice cathedral train, a veil that probably cost more than most cars. But her smile was the real showpiece, radiating triumph rather than joy. Her supposed father, actually a character actor from Los Angeles, walked her down the aisle with practiced dignity. The irony wasn't lost on me. Even her wedding party was a performance. As she passed my position, our eyes met briefly. The smile never wavered, but something flickered behind those calculating eyes. Not recognition or fear, but anticipation. She thought this was her moment of victory. The ceremony began with traditional vows and readings. I noticed Derek had positioned himself in the back row, his fake beard slightly askew. Jennifer moved silently along the side camera, capturing every angle. Devram, dearly beloved, the officiant began, "We gather today to witness the union of Marcus and Stephanie." But Ruth had arranged a special officiant, Detective Raymond Price, working undercover. His ceremonial credentials were real, but so was his badge and warrant. The readings proceeded normally until Stephanie's chosen passage. She'd selected something about new beginnings and leaving the past behind, delivered by one of her actor friends with soap opera sincerity. The irony was thick enough to choke on. The rings, the detective officiant called. As the best man fumbled for the rings, I noticed increased movement from Derek's associates. They were positioning themselves strategically ready for something. My hand moved instinctively to my pocket, where I kept the master recording device. "Nay, Marcus," Stephanie Stage whispered. "Where's your father's gift?" "What gift?" Marcus looked genuinely confused. "The papers he was supposed to sign for our future." Her smile grew brittle. Marcus shook his head, bewildered. "He never mentioned any papers." The first crack in Stephanie's facade appeared. Her eyes darted to Derek, who made a subtle hand gesture. The associates tensed. If anyone has reason why these two should not be joined, the detective continued the traditional words with extra emphasis. "Speak now or forever hold your peace." The universe held its breath. This was the moment we'd planned for, but I needed Stephanie to make the first move. To reveal her true nature before 200 witnesses. "Actually," Stephanie said, loudly, turning to face the guests with theatrical flair, "there is something that needs addressing." She looked directly at me. "Cordell, would you please come forward?" The trap was baited. Now to see if I could turn it against the trapper. I stood slowly, aware of every eye tracking my movement. Frank, Barbara, Ruth, George Henry, all tensed for action. Jennifer raised her camera, ready to capture history. "Of course, Stephanie," I replied calmly, walking toward the altar. "I've been expecting this moment." Confusion rippled through the legitimate guests while Stephanie's plants leaned forward eagerly. Marcus looked between us, lost and increasingly alarmed. "Dad, what's going on?" Stephanie's smile turned predatory. "Your father has something to announce, don't you, Cordell? About your retirement plans." "Indeed I do," I agreed, reaching into my jacket. "I have several announcements, actually, but ladies first. Why don't you tell everyone why you really wanted me here?" The chess match entered its final moves. Stephanie had tried to force checkmate, but she'd left her king exposed. Time to demonstrate why experience trumped arrogance every time. The wedding that had begun with Bach would end with a very different kind of music. The sound of truth destroying carefully constructed lies. Stephanie's composure cracked like thin ice under spring sun. She hadn't expected me to turn her ambush into my opportunity. Her voice rose sharp and commanding. "You're becoming confused, Cordell. This isn't appropriate for my wedding day." She turned to the guests with practiced concern. "My father-in-law has been struggling with memory issues. We've been trying to help him transition to assisted living." Memory issues. I pulled out my phone, connected to the venue's sound system courtesy of Frank's crew. "My memory is crystal clear, Stephanie, or should I say, Stephanie Walsh." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Derek half rose from his seat, hand moving toward his jacket. Frank's construction workers strategically placed throughout the venue shifted to block exits. "For instance," I continued voice carrying clearly, "I remember this conversation from Thanksgiving." Stephanie's recorded voice filled the space. "The old fool has more than we thought. 3 commercial properties downtown and a stock portfolio worth millions. We just need him out of the picture." Marcus staggered backward. What is this?" Your fiancé discussing my removal with her real partner Derek Crenshaw. He's the gentleman in the back with the poorly applied facial hair. Derek stood fully now, but found himself surrounded by off-duty officers from George's catering staff. His associates discovered similar attention from Frank's workers. "This is ridiculous!" Stephanie shrieked, her mask slipping completely. "You can't do this, Marcus. Your father is having an episode. An episode where I documented everything. I produced a folder thick with evidence. Like how you drugged my son's coffee to make him compliant." The screens around the venue installed for displaying wedding photos came alive with surveillance footage. Stephanie crushing pills. Stephanie photographing my financial documents. Stephanie meeting with Derek in hotels. Jennifer stepped forward, removing her photographer's cap and glasses. "Hello, sister?" If Stephanie had been pale before she went corpse white now. "Jenny, no. You're supposed to be in a mental institution like you tried to make happen." Jennifer's voice carried years of pain. "I've been waiting for this moment for 5 years. "Marcus." Stephanie grabbed for him, but he pulled away, staring at her with dawning horror. "Baby, whatever they're saying, we can work through this. Your father's jealous, trying to break us apart." "Then explain this," Ruth commanded, approaching with legal documents. "Stephanie Walker died 35 years ago. You've been using a dead child's identity. That's federal identity theft." The detective officiant removed his ceremonial robe, revealing his badge. "Stephanie Walsh, you're under arrest for identity theft, conspiracy to commit fraud, and elder abuse." "No." Stephanie's scream echoed off the vaulted ceiling. "This isn't happening, Derek." But Derek was already in handcuffs, his fake beard askew, as George's off-duty officers read him his rights. His muscle tried to flee but found every exit blocked by Frank's crews. The legitimate guests sat frozen, witnessing better drama than any soap opera. The actors Stephanie had hired began slinking toward exits, only to be corralled by Barbara's network of teachers and former students who'd been documenting their participation. "Get out of here!" Stephanie screamed at me, her wedding dress train tangling as she spun frantically. "Get out of here and don't come back. You're not welcome here." I smiled sadly, gesturing to the altar. "Okay, but I'll take some others with me." Frank stood first, my brother's solid presence commanding attention. Then Barbara, then Ruth. One by one, every legitimate family member rose. George and Henry abandoned their stations, their staff maintaining perfect professional calm while gathering evidence. But the devastating blow came when Marcus stepped away from Stephanie. "No," she whispered, reaching for him. "Marcus, please, I love you." "You drugged me." His voice broke. "You were poisoning me. My God, what else did you do?" The screens displayed more evidence. Jennifer's recordings of Stephanie bragging about previous schemes, documents showing Harold Morrison's mysterious decline, Dorothy Paulson's forced institutionalization. Harold Morrison. I announced to the stunned crowd. "Dorothy Paulson. My son would have been victim number 3 if we hadn't stopped her." Stephanie's scream of rage could have shattered crystal. She lunged at Jennifer wedding dress, ripping as officers restrained her. "You destroyed everything you were supposed to stay quiet. Like our parents stayed quiet while you robbed them." Jennifer stood tall, despite tears streaming. "They died in poverty because of you." Marcus collapsed into a chair, head in hands. I moved to comfort him, but he needed space to process the betrayal. His groomsmen, loyal friends, formed a protective circle around him. "Ladies and gentlemen," Detective Price addressed the crowd. "We'll need statements from anyone who received financial requests or unusual documentation from Ms. Walsh." Several guests raised hands tentatively. Stephanie had apparently been working multiple angles seeking investments for fictional ventures. The arrest proceeded with cinematic flair. Stephanie designer dress destroyed, makeup streaking, fought the officers every step. Her screams echoed across the manicured grounds as they led her to waiting patrol cars. "This isn't over, Cordell," she shrieked. "I'll destroy you. I'll take everything." "You already tried," I replied quietly. "You failed." Derek went more quietly, his criminal experience teaching him lawyers were better than tantrums. His associates faced various charges from conspiracy to intimidation. The fake relatives scattered like roaches when lights flicked on. Several ended up detained for questioning about their roles in the broader scheme. The supposed Vanderbilt cousins turned out to be struggling actors who thought they'd been hired for performance art. As chaos reigned, real family gathered around Marcus. He sat devastated, the magnitude of deception crushing his spirit. Barbara held him while he shook, whispering maternal comfort. "I'm sorry, son," I said when he finally looked up. "I wanted to tell you sooner, but—" "You saved my life," he interrupted, voice raw. "She would have, after she finished with you." "We saved each other," I corrected. "Family protects family." The reception hall, so carefully decorated for celebration, became a crime scene. FBI agents arrived to investigate the interstate fraud allegations. The wedding cake stood untouched, a monument to deception's sweet facade. Jennifer approached hesitantly. "Cordell, I can't thank you enough. You did what my family couldn't. You fought back smart." "You're the hero here," I assured her, coming forward, risking her retaliation. That took real courage. Ruth coordinated with law enforcement, her judicial experience invaluable. "The marriage certificate was never signed. Legally, this wedding never happened. Marcus is free." Free. Such a simple word for such a complex situation. Marcus was free from Stephanie's chemical and emotional manipulation, but the scars would take time to heal. As the venue emptied, our family gathered in the garden. The Stevenson cousins had salvaged what they could from the catering, creating an impromptu meal for those who'd stood against deception. "Well," Frank said with characteristic understatement, "that wasn't the wedding I expected." "Thank God," Barbara added, "though I do feel sorry for Marcus. The humiliation—" "Better humiliated than destroyed," Ruth observed. "Cordell's strategy saved him from far worse." Marcus joined us. Eventually, Ty loosened, eyes red but clearer than they'd been in months. "The detectives want me to get tested, document the drugs in my system. They say it'll strengthen the case. We'll get through this together," I promised. "Your mother would be proud of how strong you're being." "Mom would have seen through Stephanie immediately," Marcus said with bitter humor. "I was so stupid." "You were targeted by a professional predator," Jennifer corrected firmly. "My sister spent years perfecting her techniques. You're a victim, not a fool." The sun set over Lake Michigan as we reclaimed the day. What began as Stephanie's triumph became her downfall. The wedding she'd orchestrated to seal her con instead sealed her fate. George raised a glass of champagne originally meant for toasting the newlyweds. To family, to truth, to Cordell's brilliant patience. To Marcus's strength, I countered, and to justice finally served. We drank in the garden while inside crime scene technicians documented evidence of a conspiracy that spanned years and states. Stephanie's scream still echoed in memory, but it was the sound of evil recognizing its own defeat. The father of the groom had indeed left the wedding as commanded. But I'd taken with me everyone who mattered, leaving Stephanie with nothing but handcuffs and a future behind bars. The old bull had protected his herd, and the matador discovered too late that her cape was woven from her own lies. 6 months after the wedding that never was autumn, painted Michigan in shades of gold and crimson. I stood in the kitchen of my family home, preparing Sunday dinner as Margaret had taught me. The familiar ritual brought comfort after the storm we'd weathered. Marcus lived with me now, rebuilding his life with quiet determination. The drugs had left his system within weeks, but the emotional recovery took longer. He'd thrown himself into therapy and worked slowly reclaiming the confident young man Stephanie had tried to destroy. "Dad, Jennifer's here," he called from the living room, his voice steady and clear. Jennifer Walsh had become an unexpected addition to our family circle. Free from her sister's shadow, she'd blossomed into the person she was meant to be. With a loan I'd insisted was investment, not charity, she'd opened Second Chance's Bakery in downtown Detroit. I brought dessert, she announced, carrying boxes that filled the house with vanilla and cinnamon. Apple turnover's mom's recipe, the ones Stephanie never let me make because they were too common. The trial had dominated headlines for weeks. Black Widow bride exposed at altar became the story nobody could stop discussing. Stephanie Walsh received 15 years federal imprisonment for identity theft, fraud, conspiracy, and elder abuse. Derek Crenshaw got 20, his prior record working against him. More importantly, their previous victims found some measure of justice. The FBI recovered nearly $2 million in hidden accounts. While it couldn't restore the lives lost, Harold Morrison's and Dorothy Paulson's, families finally had answers and some financial recovery. Frank arrived with his wife, Susan, followed by Barbara and her husband, Tom. The dining room filled with genuine laughter, something absent during Stephanie's tenure. No one cataloged the silverware or evaluated the furniture. They simply enjoyed being family. Marcus has news. I announced once everyone settled with pot roast and Margaret's famous mashed potatoes. My son flushed but smiled genuinely, an expression I'd feared lost forever. I've been accepted to Wayne State's MBA program, starting in January. Cheers erupted around the table. Barbara hugged him fiercely while Frank slapped his back with brotherly pride. I'm paying for it myself, Marcus added firmly. Through work and loans, I need to earn this. That's my boy, I said, throat-tight with emotion. Ruth arrived fashionably late, as always, but with excellent reason. The prosecution called. 3 more of Stephanie's victims came forward after seeing the news coverage. She's facing additional charges in Ohio and Indiana. May she rot, Frank said bluntly. Frank, Barbara scolded, then added, though I can't disagree. Jennifer grew quiet whenever Stephanie's name arose. The sister who'd tormented her childhood and destroyed her adulthood was finally contained, but the scars remained. You know what I realized, Jennifer said suddenly. I spent so many years hating her, fearing her, that I forgot to live my own life. Now I wake up excited about the day, my bakery, my friends, my freedom. It's like discovering sunshine after living in a cave. Marcus reached over and squeezed her hand supportively. They'd bonded over shared survival, 2 people who'd escaped Stephanie's web. Nothing romantic. The wounds were too fresh, but a deep understanding that transcended typical friendship. After dinner, we gathered in the living room where a fire crackled cheerfully. The scene was everything Stephanie had tried to steal. Family comfortable in their own skin, sharing stories and gentle teasing. I keep thinking about Marcus's wedding, George mused. The real one someday. How do we top that drama? By having no drama at all, Marcus said firmly. When I marry, if I marry, it'll be boring. Wonderfully, peacefully boring. No fake relatives, no hidden agendas, just 2 people committing to honest love. Hear, hear, Henry agreed. Though I wouldn't mind if you still used my flowers, without the recording devices this time. As evening deepened, people began departing with promises to return next Sunday. The tradition Stephanie had tried to corrupt had been reclaimed stronger for surviving the assault. Jennifer lingered, helping clear dishes. Cordell, I've been thinking. Would it be okay if I took back my maiden name? Walsh feels tainted now. What was it? Carpenter. Jennifer Carpenter. It was my mother's name before Stephanie convinced her to change it for sophistication. Then be Jennifer Carpenter. I encouraged. Choose your own identity. Marcus walked her to her car. Their conversation too quiet to hear, but animated with gestures. When he returned, I saw something in his expression I'd missed for months. Hope. A year later, life had settled into new rhythms. Marcus graduated from therapy and excelled in his MBA program. He'd also started dating Amy Chen, a pediatric nurse who joked about being terrified of meeting the father who'd exposed a con artist at the altar. Don't worry, Marcus assured her over dinner at our home. He only investigates people who drug his coffee." Amy laughed nervously until she realized we were all joking. Mostly. The evening went beautifully with Amy fitting naturally into our family dynamic. She even brought homemade cookies, earning immediate approval from Jennifer. The legal proceedings concluded with satisfying finality. Stephanie's appeals failed spectacularly. Her prison letters to Marcus went straight to prosecutors as evidence of continued harassment. Derek turned state's evidence in exchange for a slightly reduced sentence revealing 3 more elderly victims they'd targeted. Jennifer's bakery thrived, becoming a community cornerstone. She hired former addicts and abuse survivors, creating her own family of second chances. The girl Stephanie had tried to destroy became a beacon of hope for others. One sunny morning in September, I visited Margaret's grave with fresh flowers and updates. The cardinal that often appeared landed on nearby branch head, cocked as if listening. "Marcus is healing, my love. He's found a good woman who makes him laugh. The business is strong, the family is united. I kept my promise." The cardinal chirped once before flying away, and I swear it sounded like approval. Margaret always believed in signs and messages from beyond. Maybe it was foolish, but I felt her presence, her pride in how we'd handled the crisis. That evening, as I prepared for another Sunday dinner, Marcus found me in the kitchen. "Dad, I've been thinking about forgiveness." I paused, hands stilling over the cutting board. "Oh, not for Stephanie," he clarified quickly. "She made her choices, but for myself, for falling for it, for not listening to you sooner. Son, you don't need forgiveness for being human. You need congratulations for being strong enough to accept the truth when it came." Amy says the same thing. Says my experience will make me a better husband someday. More aware, more careful, but not cynical. Amy sounds wise. Like Mom was. Different kind of wisdom, but yes. Your mother saw through people instantly. Amy seems to see the good despite the bad. Both are valuable. Marcus hugged me, then the first real embrace since that terrible wedding day. "Thanks for not giving up on me, Dad. For playing the long game even when it meant letting me make mistakes." "That's what fathers do," I said, returning the hug fiercely. "We catch you when you fall, dust you off, and pretend we weren't terrified the whole time." As family arrived for dinner, the house filled with warmth Stephanie had tried to steal. Barbara brought a new teacher friend who'd recently divorced. Frank discussed expanding his business with Marcus's help after graduation. Ruth regaled us with courtroom stories that had everyone laughing. Jennifer arrived last with her usual dessert boxes and unusual companion, a man about her age with kind eyes and gentle manner. "Everyone, this is Robert. He's a regular customer who finally worked up courage to ask me out." Robert survived the family interrogation with grace, even joking that he was glad we didn't have hidden cameras in the cookies. By evening's end, he'd earned provisional approval and an invitation to next week's dinner. As the night wound down, I stood on the porch, watching lightning bugs dance in the garden. The house that Stephanie had marked for liquidation remained solid, filled with love and laughter. The family she'd tried to fracture emerged stronger, bonded by shared triumph over evil. A car pulled up, and Amy emerged with Marcus. They'd been to a concert, faces glowing with simple happiness. No drugs, no manipulation, just 2 people discovering genuine connection. "Mr. Cordell," Amy called out. "Thank you for dinner last week. My mom wants to meet the man who saved his son at the altar. She says you're a hero." "Just a father," I corrected. "Nothing heroic about protecting family." But as they walked hand in hand into the house, I thought about all the fathers who hadn't been able to protect their families from predators like Stephanie. About Harold Morrison dying confused and alone. About Dorothy Paulson signing away her legacy under chemical influence. Maybe there was something heroic in refusing to be a victim. In gathering allies instead of facing evil alone. In choosing patience over passion, strategy over surrender. The cardinal appeared one last time, settling on Margaret's rose bush. I nodded to it, accepting the blessing it represented. Then I went inside to join my family, leaving the darkness outside where it belonged. Later, as dishes were washed and goodbyes exchanged, Jennifer pulled me aside. "Cordell, I'm thinking of writing a book about what happened. Not for money, but to help other families recognize the signs. Would that be okay?" "More than okay. Necessary. How many Stephanies are out there right now planning their next score?" "Too many," she agreed. "But maybe we can help stop a few." The book would come later, becoming a bestseller that helped dozens of families identify and stop elder abuse schemes. But that night, we simply celebrated survival and second chances. As I prepared for bed, I found a note Marcus had left on my pillow. "Dad, thank you for loving me enough to let me fail and strong enough to catch me when I fell. Your son always." I placed the note in my drawer, next to Margaret's photo evidence that love could triumph over deception, that families could emerge from crisis stronger than before. The wedding where I was told to get out had become the moment our family truly came together. Sometimes the greatest gift a father can give his son isn't protection from all harm, but the wisdom to recognize wolves in sheep's clothing and the courage to face them. Stephanie had screamed when she realized who was leaving with me. But her scream was nothing compared to the quiet power of truth, spoken with love of family standing together against those who would tear them apart. The old bull had protected his herd, and in doing so, taught the young bull how to protect himself. To those of you watching who've faced similar betrayals, who've wondered if you should speak up or stay silent, remember this: evil thrives in darkness, but withers in light. Trust your instincts. Gather your allies. Document everything. And never ever let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting those you love. How many of you have spotted a Stephanie in your own lives? Someone who seemed too interested in assets rather than affection. Share your stories in the comments below. You might just save another family from heartbreak. If this story touched your heart or opened your eyes, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of triumph over deception. Share this video with anyone who needs reminding that it's never too late to stand up to a bully, no matter how much white lace they're wearing. Thank you for joining me on this journey from betrayal to justice. Remember, the best inheritance you can leave your children isn't money or property. It's the wisdom to recognize truth and the courage to defend it. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your family close. God bless, and may your Sunday dinners always be filled with genuine love, not hidden agendas.